Hello, I'm Daniel, and welcome to Fight Director's Camp. Today, time to talk about rolling. I'm only doing the forward roll so you don't have to. Why am I not a fan of front somersaults or forward rolls? Well, it breaks our first rule, safety. Usually, when people do a front somersault, you see them place their head on the ground, which could hurt as they smack it. Then, when their head's on the ground, they could compress the vertebrae in their neck. And finally, we generally roll right down the center of the spine, all of which can be very uncomfortable. Most people learn front somersaults or forward rolls when they're very, very young, so we're usually built differently than when we're adults. And usually, it's performing on a surface like a mat that is a lot more forgiving than what we usually perform on, which is a stage or a set. The second issue I have is breaking of Rule 2. It takes a long time to go from a standing position to the floor because you have to have your feet in neutral, you bend your knees, you fold forward, place your hands. And in performance time, it seems to take too long. And it looks like technique, so it robs us of the illusion of spontaneity. So breaking Rule 1, already it's off the table. Breaking number 2, then it's completely not valuable for us, in my opinion. Shoulder roll. Shoulder roll. You'll notice that I take a large step forward to drop my center, so I'm already going to be closer to the floor. And you'll notice I'm going to reach out with my hands, but not directly in front of me, but rather to my open side, to my non-dominant side. And then when my hands touch the floor, my feet leave the floor and I lower myself to my shoulder and then roll diagonally from my shoulder to the opposite hip. Now, when I say shoulder, I don't actually mean the joint or the front of it. Quite the opposite. It's well in the back towards the place above the shoulder blade. And it's important to understand that you don't want to drive a sensitive area of your shoulder into the floor. And that's where your reach, your extension, your curvature, all these little aspects of the shape you create make the roll far more kind to the body. Another thing I would suggest is breathe out as you're doing it. It is infinitely easier than holding your breath and feeling that jarring aspect when you're locked up and all tense. Aikido roll. Aikido roll. Now the Aikido roll is very similar to the shoulder roll. Again, I'm going to be stepping forward. Again, I'm going to be reaching to my non-dominant side, only this time, rather than both palms on the floor, lowering me to the floor, what I'm doing is using my dominant hand, just the knife edge of that hand, and guiding myself through the circle of the Aikido roll. So basically, I just barely find the floor with the edge of my hand, and then, as I travel up to my shoulder, the rest of the roll is identical to my shoulder roll. I go from my shoulder to my opposite hip. My edge of my hand barely finds the floor, more and more of me connects with the floor, till finally, by the time my shoulder's on the floor, I am feeling supported and engaged entirely on the floor. Not putting your legs over your shoulders roll, or barrel roll, or I'm on fire roll, or just don't do this roll. Okay. Obstacle roll. An obstacle roll is a roll I like to think of as a shoulder roll with a little bit of chutzpah. And so I need just enough energy to get over the obstacle without either driving through it, nor do I want to give myself so much energy that I am sent flying ass over tea kettle with no sense of control. So that's one of the reasons why I talk about an obstacle roll versus a dive roll where people run in and throw themselves with a great sense of energy. Now, I have a number of peers who are fantastic and far more athletic than I, who can achieve remarkable distances and remarkable extensions. So remember that all of these are for you and to be done at your sense of comfort and at your level. So I think a good rule to know or remember is if you can stand on one side of an object and put your hands on the other side simultaneously, making a bridge, and you can do that comfortably, you should be able to do an obstacle roll easily. If it's way too wide or way too high, then you may need to be far more athletic or gifted to do this. Otherwise, you may need a mechanical device like mats or a springboard, and if you're using a springboard, use mats too, to help you over. And then it's no longer, in my opinion, just stage combat. Then it's starting to get towards being a stunt because you're using mechanical devices that are outside of your absolute control. Bailing on an obstacle. I find, and not everyone agrees with this, and I just want to put this out there, I like to use the palms of my hand for shoulder rolls and obstacle rolls when I have the potential of using more energy or having more energy still in my body when I find the floor. So this way I'm very much using it up, and I'm using the Aikido usually in an extended lengthening shape. Because I'm not lowering myself with the palms of my hand, I have to use up the potential energy in the circle and the shape of my roll. I think a good thing to understand is that you're full of potential energy whenever you're standing up. You're merely fighting gravity, so we forget all about it because we do it all the time. But really, just the act of standing fills you with a lot of potential energy. And if you suddenly stop standing, that uncontrolled fall, where I'm sure all of us have experienced this, especially anyone who lives in an area that has ice sometime during the year, you know it can be extremely uncomfortable to have a fall. So the idea is to take a large step, bend your knee, lower your body, and you're using up all this potential energy and making yourself far less susceptible to injury because you're closer to the floor and you've used up all this energy. Then in a shoulder roll or an obstacle roll, your palms touch the floor and you lower yourself. So that's even more energy absorption until finally your shoulder's on the floor and you simply roll along your body. And I think a good thing to remember is as long as you're engaged and in constant contact, the chance of injury is far less than when you leave the floor and then reacquire the floor suddenly. Any place where you lose contact and reacquire is going to be a place of energy transfer. And if you're not careful, that's where you're going to get your bumps, bruises, and sense of discomfort. The kip. A roll is really interesting, or can be really interesting, but it still doesn't tell the audience the entirety of the story, especially if you want to create the illusion of injury. Add a kip to the end of a roll, and at the end of the kip, we will have a cell. So the kip is placing your feet, the soles of your feet, on the floor just before your bum finds the floor. So you continue your roll as you always had, either from your shoulder or Aikido roll. And then before your bum touches the floor, soles of the feet. And then once the soles of feet have touched and you have therefore dissipated energy, then you play the illusion, the cell, that you hurt your back, and that's where you then rotate, grasping the illusion of grasping your back, because that's the illusion that you're trying to sell, the injury to the back. One of the reasons why I talk about not placing your bum on the floor is the danger that when you are on the floor with your bum, you often want to land on your heels like this. So this could really injure you. And when you're on the floor, you want to make sure that when you're landing, you're coming out of the roll and landing with the soles of your feet before your bum touches the floor. The danger is many people want to do this. And that's a lot of pressure on the ankles. even if they keep their back down, that could really hurt. So this is not ideal. By concentrating on getting the feet down before the bum, we have a lot more control. Then, onto the cell. Caution. These are things we commonly see happen that people do with their feet at the end of a kip, and it could really hurt you, so be careful. Ideally, you want to do your kip, then your cell, rather than trying to do them simultaneously. Make sense? So I think what I want you to go away with is an understanding that you don't have to do it exactly the way I do it. Provided, though, you can go from standing position to the floor safely, comfortably, consistently, then you're already way ahead. And it's a super useful technique to have to pull out when you want to do something spectacular, to use up some time on stage, to move over an object or a fellow actor, or generally just to give yourself some choice in performance. And, well, until next time. So, I thought, why don't we do a little bit of rolling? Okay, well, I guess today is the day I'm going to talk about rolling. I'm so lonely. What are we going to do today? Well, rolling.
Thank you so much for checking out this video. Be sure to check out Daniel over at Rapier Wit with links in the description. Also, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, making sure to hit that bell notification and set it to all so you don't miss any of FDC's weekly content created by the community for you. Thanks for watching.